Hello, everyone, and welcome to Partnership for Success, SEL Onboarding for the Learning Extension Centers. My name is Kenesha Dumas, and I'm here to help with the technical side of things, including navigating the Aperture website and a tool that we highly suggest using called the DESA. My contact information is listed there. I invite you to provide any feedback or support that myself or Nikki are able to provide. I have a background in social emotional learning for the past 3 to 4 years, including previous employment with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Central Ohio. So I'm so excited for you to join us today to obtain valuable information that will not only impact you, but the students at your LEC as well. Nikki, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Hey, everybody, I'm Nikki Mills. I work both at Vineyard Community Center with our out-of-school time programming, and I also work with Partnership for Success. So excited to walk on this journey with you as you explore social emotional learning and look to implement it at your center. I think that you will find it has tremendous impact and benefit. I know that we have found that at our center as well. I have been a part of this community for over 5 years, grateful for everything we've learned, everyone I've met, and just the resources and support that we have. So very excited to be here with you.
Awesome. And for today's agenda, we would like to focus on what is SEL, why is SEL important, but also how can you as an LEC implement SEL in your own setting. And then for today's outcomes, we'd like to introduce the social emotional learning as a component of out-of-school time programming. Here we have a formal definition of what is SEL. This comes from CASEL. I will give you a short definition, or what we can call the Kenesha definition. SEL is the process of developing interpersonal skills, self-management, and self-awareness that are vital for success inside and outside of the classroom. To take a deeper dive into the definition that CASEL has provided, we're going to watch a video. And as you watch this video, I encourage you to pay attention to what resonates with you, but also the words that are used to describe what SEL is.
Social emotional learning is essential.
It's the tools that kids need to be resilient, to be problem solvers, to be good people.
SEL is really about the holistic development of young people.
SEL is trying to bring a balance to the individual and what are the personal competencies you need to develop to be successful. How do you pull them all together so that kids can relate and navigate the world more effectively?
The myth was that knowledge was information that could be bolted onto a brain like any other kind of mechanical part. The truth is knowledge is constructive. The truth is all learning is relational. The truth is that emotion drives attention and attention drives learning.
Social and emotional learning is about how you do school. It's about what the student experiences, what the student learns, how teachers teach.
We can think about schools and classrooms, out-of-school time spaces, families, etc., as places where there's an exchange of knowledge about the world, knowledge about yourself, and knowledge about the other persons that you're interacting with. All of those kinds of experiences, I think, help form and expose and shape the ways in which young people understand themselves and other people.
And we start talking about the whole child. Does your child understand self-awareness? Do they understand social awareness? Do they make good decisions? Are they responsible? And then we start talking about what that applies to academics and looking at all the essential skills we need them to be successful in life.
Children learn when their heart is open, engaged, connected, and filled with purpose.
Learning is magical, and through SEL, we can create conditions that allow all kids to access that magic.
In watching that video, can you explain a word or a phrase about SEL that stood out to you. Of course, in your own time, you can just take a few moments just to jot some things down that resonated with you in the video. And then this comes from the Ohio Department of Education, their strategic plan for education. It was believed that social emotional learning was so significant that it was included in 1 out of the 4 learning domains. So by contributing to the social emotional learning development of the students at your LEC, you are also empowering them academically, which isn't happening just here at a local level, it's happening at a state level as well.
Yes, and the state puts a lot of value on that. So we want to start to break that down for you and talk about what those domains look like. And so when we break SEL down, we talk about competencies, different areas in which students can learn and grow and apply skills and tools that we're teaching them. We start with self-awareness. We tend to call this sort of the gatekeeper. This is where we start with social emotional learning. Self-awareness, we look at our own emotions. What do we value? And being aware of those things in ourselves. And it can look like developing a robust vocabulary to learn about our emotions, right? So when we talk about how we feel, we tend to start with mad, sad, and glad. Those are sort of our 3 basic emotions, but we all know that there are many more descriptors to talk about how we're feeling. So helping students recognize those emotions in themselves and helping them to articulate them in a way that accurately describes how they're feeling. This leads us into self-management. Once I can understand my triggers, my emotions, how I act when I feel a certain way, I can start to manage myself when I am aware of those things. I can manage my emotions, I can manage my behaviors, I can manage just kind of how I'm navigating life to work toward goals and things of that nature. We move into social awareness. So now we've learned about ourselves a little bit. Now we're going to learn about ourselves in relationship to other people. And so social awareness leads us to show understanding and empathy for other people, to see things from the points of view of others, which helps us with our next skill of relationship skills, to have positive relationships with one another, to be a contributing member of a team, to appreciate and respect one another, to negotiate conflict in a healthy manner. And the 5th competency that Castle outlined for social emotional learning is responsible decision making. And so that's where we look at the choices we make, right? So we're making ethical choices, both about our personal behavior and about social things around us. So it can affect our own decisions, and it can also affect how we're interacting with groups around us and things of that nature. This slide highlights the same 5 competencies. It just goes a little bit deeper into each one. When we look at self-awareness, it kind of shows you a couple of the things that we work on there. Like I said, identifying our emotions, recognizing our strengths, building confidence, self-efficacy in this area. Self-management, moving down on the slide there, we're looking at things like our self-discipline, our self-motivation, setting goals, looking even at our organizational skills. How are we managing our homework, the things that we need to be taking care of? Social awareness, again, that's looking at other people. It's looking beyond ourselves to our groups. And so we're looking at taking the perspective of other people. Empathy is a huge part of social awareness, to be able to relate to others, respecting other people, appreciating diversity, all really important components of social awareness. When we move to relationship skills, we're looking at things like teamwork. We're looking at things like social engagement, our communication and our listening, and how do we do that well. And then responsible decision-making, it's identifying problems and analyzing a situation and then using what we know to make an ethical, constructive decision about that. It involves also a lot of reflecting. That's a part of decision-making as well. So Castle is really one of the leading research organizations for social emotional learning. They sort of identified these 5 competencies. You heard Kanisha reference the DESA, a tool that we use, and highly recommend. We can't say that enough, and more to come on that, but it's a wonderful, wonderful tool that just helps us see our student need. But DESA comes from Aperture Education. And so what they've done is they've taken the 5 social emotional competencies that Castle identified, And they've broken them down a little bit further. So they keep those 5, but they've sort of gone deeper with some of those. So when you hear us talk about SEL competencies, we usually refer to the 8 SEL competencies. We're going from this aperture model that you see here. And so basically they took self-management, if you see on the upper right part of that circle, and they said, okay, we can talk about self-management. We can also talk about goal-directed behavior. So we're going to pull that out and make it its own competency. It's a very important skill to be able to set and work toward a goal. Social awareness, they kept the same. Relationship skills, they kept the same, but you'll see that self-awareness, we highlight self-awareness, but we also highlight optimistic thinking, critical to be able to think in an optimistic framework. And so that's something separate that we pull out and work. And then with responsible decision-making, we break that into decision-making and also personal responsibility. So while those two go together, they are also 2 things in which we can speak of individually. So when you hear about these competencies, we just want you to think for a second, like, wow, which of these do I think would be a priority at my center with the students that we are serving? And so think about that for a second. It's also a good conversation starter with your colleagues too, just as you serve and work with students. And then once we implement the DESA, it helps you see per student response, like, hey, these are competencies that we have the opportunity in which to help our students grow in their SEL strengths.
And now that you know the 8 SEL competencies that we'll be focusing on, we can also see the impacts that they will have on student outcomes. Those impacts include academic achievement, behaviors, which those top 2 will focus on mostly during our onboarding and trainings, attitudes, mental health, and then college and career readiness. And to focus more on the relationship between social emotional competence and academic achievement, if you take a look at the left side of our diagram here, you can see that with reading proficiency scores, students that showed a need in their social emotional competence typically scored in that basic to below basic threshold compared to those who did not show a need. And then on the right side of the diagram in the math proficiency scores, students who showed a need in their social emotional competence typically scored again in the basic to below basic threshold compared to the students who did not show a need.
So we see that SEL impacts academics tremendously, and we're going to go way more into that as we continue training and working together over the months to come. This slide was something that was really impactful to me when I started learning more about social emotional learning and its impact on students. This just shows us that when we look at academic achievement in relationship to income alone in and of itself accounts for about 8% of variance in reading scores. And I think, I see that and I think, well, there's not a lot I can do about somebody's income, right? Unless I am personally handing them income or personally employing them, aside from handing them resources perhaps to get connected to employment, I can't impact this. Good news is it's only 8%. Social emotional learning accounts for over 16%, and we can directly impact that. And for me, the first time I saw this, it just gave me so much hope of like, income affects us a little bit. And yes, that's important. And yes, we want to help people have resources to be gainfully employed. SEL accounts for 16% in specific to reading, and then about 15% in specific to math. We can impact that. So just working on students' social emotional competencies can greatly impact their academics, in addition to all the life skills and other tools and things that we equip them with. And so just take this as an encouragement, if you would, that, this is within our control to impact with our students.
And to continue to focus on exactly what Nikki shared, the impacts of SEL. SEL has been shown to have improvement in attitudes about self, others in school, improvement in social and emotional skills, improvement in classroom behavior, and improvement in achievement test scores. But there's also been shown to have a decrease in conduct problems such as classroom behavior and aggression, and also a decrease in emotional distress such as anxiety and depression. And what we would like you to do right now is to picture a student in your mind, someone that you've recently been able to connect with. They don't necessarily have to be in your LEC setting. And as you have that student in your mind, if you knew now that SEL had the positive benefits listed at the top of the diagram there, and a decrease in the challenges or what may be seen as negative in the bottom portion of the diagram there, do you believe SEL is worth it? Do you understand the importance behind SEL and why we spend so much time in this space encouraging adults to use it in their interactions with youth? And just to continue on with the impacts and how SEL benefits a child, not only in the classroom today, but outside of the classroom tomorrow, including workplace skills, such as basic skills like reading and writing, thinking skills like creative thinking and problem solving, but also personal qualities such as responsibility and self-management. And one interesting fact that I really enjoyed seeing here is that 16 skills were identified as necessary for the workplace, and 8 out of 16, or 50% of those skills, were also considered to be social and emotional skills. And just to continue to contribute to the significance of SEL, the reason or purpose behind it, but also the credibility, we wanted to also provide some additional research and documentation. Of course, if you would like additional notes on this research or have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Nikki. We would be happy to assist. We'll also send these out as a follow-up, as for the sake of time, we won't go into depth into each article. So the first one here focuses on how social emotional development is critical to prevent violence in youth. And in this article, the author summarizes research-informed attempts to prevent violence in youth by teaching these critical social emotional learning preventative factors. And the second article that we have here, it's a report from the Aspen Institute. And in this, the Institute lists domains, the different domains that collectively work together to encourage academic success in students on a national level. And at the core of those domains is social emotional learning. This article that we have here kind of navigates and discusses the challenges that we all may face in the stage that we are in, which is the reopening of schools. I'm sure that we can all relate that different cities, different districts, different states have a different plan of approach to schools reopening. And this article just gives us a guideline or some navigating tools to face those challenges. And this article here comes from the American Academy of Pediatrics. And in this, the author focuses on the impacts of the lost instructional time in SEL development and how classrooms will need to be prepared to accommodate or to change their instructional practices and curriculum without the expectation that all lost academic progress can be caught up. I think that the shining light in this dark time that we're all attempting to navigate is that we have this amazing collective community called LECs that can provide this developmental social emotional learning skills to the students during this time that they're not getting it inside the classroom, which is very, very significant. And then we lastly wanted to leave you here with some fast facts about SEL that comes from the Aspen Institute. The first one here, 9 out of 10 teachers believe social emotional skills can be taught. 4 in 5 teachers want more help or support in developing social emotional skills in students. And then 75% of words that students use about school are negative, but integrating emotional development improves students' attitudes and engagement about school.
So to summarize what we're teaching about this morning, here are 4 points that we know about social emotional learning and social emotional skills. One, we know they're essential. Students need these, adults need these. We all need strong social emotional competencies to help us navigate life well. Secondly, we know they can be taught. So it's not something that you have to have been born with or anything like that. We can learn these skills. We can teach these skills to our students. This is something that we can impact. Thirdly, we can measure it. We have great tools to actually help us see how we're doing. Are we making an impact with our students? Are we helping them to grow in the areas in which they are demonstrating that they need growth? And then finally, they impact. It just has impact. It helps positive things become better. It decreases, negative behaviors and attitudes, and it just has tremendous impact. And so, just grateful to know about this. We have one more video to show to kind of help wrap this section up, just talking about some of the benefits of SEL. And so we will take a look at that together.
I'm a data guy, I like numbers, and we have a lot of evidence that social emotional learning has made a difference.
We had a graduation rate of 62%. Last year, we put up a record-breaking 84%.
Over the last 5 years, our expulsions have been cut in half.
We were suspending about 13,000 days of out-of-school suspension. We were 10 times the average for any school district in Ohio. And within that first year alone, we were able to reduce our out-of-school suspensions by 55%.
Attendance rates went up. We know that attendance is directly correlated to academic improvement and achievement, but it also had other outcomes that were extremely important, which is students feeling more connected to schools, educators having to think outside the box, helping students overcome some of the challenges that are in their life.
There's an 11-to-1 return on investment. So for every dollar invested in programming around social emotional learning, we're seeing that they're saving $11 on remedial programs, dropout prevention. There's lots of reasons that people are coming to the conclusion that this is something that we need to be prioritizing.
So good. So SEL has great impact. And I think that one of the things that you can take back and talk with folks at your center about is just how can we prioritize SEL? And we know you're doing amazing things. You're opening your doors for students to come in, a place where they can come in and work on schoolwork and have connection with other people, adults and students. How can we make SEL a priority? How can we make that something, the lens through which we look at everything we do? And so kind of wrapping up our introduction to what SEL is and why it is important, we did want to leave you with a little bit of a strategy before we left. And we want to look at routines and rituals. And this is something that we're going to go into a lot more detail about in trainings to come and in emails that we send to you with resources and activities. But we wanted to leave you with a note about greetings. Super, super easy to implement a solid greeting routine at your center. You don't need anything to do it except for yourself and a student. So no equipment required, pretty simple. And we do have one more video just to quickly show you the impact of having a solid greeting at your center. And honestly, I think we try to greet our students well, right? They come in, we say hello, how's it going? Let's get started. Let's jump into schoolwork or whatever it is that we're, starting with today. But if we look at that greeting in more detail, it actually can have a pretty tremendous impact on students coming into our space. So we're gonna watch this quick video and then we'll talk for a second about greetings and go from there.
The driver for learning is the social connection. Activating a child's cognitive skills begins with activating their social connectedness. Children in this school are starting the day with an adult saying to them, I see you, I know you, I'm connecting with you, and you're important to me.
We start each day by greeting every kid at the door. Good morning, Declan.
You look pretty, Miss Turner.
Thank you, baby. Guess what I sing this weekend? Every classroom does some variation of, would you like a high five, handshake, or hug? Essentially, it's what greeting would you like? How you doing, handsome? Good.
There is a great deal of cultural sensitivity and empowerment for children to say, here is how I want to greet you.
High five, handshake, or hug. You got your hair done? Good morning, Molly. You got your hair done? Let me just turn around. I love it. All right, we're gonna have a good day today? All right. High five, handshake, or hug. During that time, I'm just trying to connect with them. All right. Help them from their transition from home to school. And just kind of as like a pulse check to see where they are. Oh, I knew you wanted a hug. How are you feeling today, sir? Good. We gonna have a good day? Look at my eyes. Do they look escalated? Do they look triggered? Do they look upset? So it's a way for me to see, okay, who needs to be where? How can I help? How can I be of assistance to start their day off most effectively? Good morning, Ariella. How you doing today? I'm being very intentional about my interactions with students, right? So it's not just I'm in the back of the room, hey, come in. No, I'm making a connection with them. Have eye contact with them. I'm checking in how they're doing. I'm checking to make sure they're okay. Good morning, friends. Good morning, friends. I think the impact is deep relationships. I get to know my students. I get to check in with them. I get to find out something about them. They get to find out something about me. We get to make a connection. And that starts with the greeting at the door. All right, come on in.
So a child is walking in the door feeling cared for, empowered, and encouraged. And that teacher is focusing in on who that child is. And that's how the day starts.
So great, so great. So in a second, we'll show you a quick poster that we think will be helpful for that. But one really great thing about greeting, several great things about greetings is, first of all, students feel connection when they come to your center. You're pausing to say hello, to greet them, and also giving them some choice as to how they want to be greeted is actually a trauma-informed practice, which we'll go into in more depth in other trainings. But allowing students choice is very empowering for them. So for them to choose how they want to greet you is actually a really big deal. And another thing I want to point out is that, it also talked about as the person greeting your student, that gives you a quick read of them as they walk in. Do they seem like they're feeling okay? Does something maybe seem off? Kind of helps you see how you might be able to best care for them. And so the trick with this, though, is that we saw a lot of great ideas, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. So high five, handshake, or hug might work outside of COVID, but during COVID, when we're not trying to have a lot of physical contact, we found this other poster that offers some suggestions. And what I've seen at a lot of centers is, a lot of times they have this posted to remind students of some good choices, but also to let them come up with their own. If they're not loving one of these, that's cool. If they have their own little routine they want to do, go with it. Let them choose how they want to greet. But here are some socially safe ways to greet during a pandemic. And so, they've got the elbow bump, like an air hug, they've got a salute, they've got a foot bump, what's up, peace. So some just different suggestions, and we've got this as a resource. You can Google it and find it. You could make your own, but just different ways to greet students as they walk in. And we feel like this is one strategy of many that we're going to cover, but one that we think has great value. And so this kind of wraps up our session for today. We wanted to talk about what SEL is, why it's important, and to give you one quick strategy that you can take with you right away. We also would really love your feedback. So if you have a minute and have a phone or a tablet and you want to just scan that QR code, we have a quick feedback form. We would love to hear your feedback just on this presentation and to see how we can better come alongside and serve you. So on behalf of us, I just want to say thanks for being here. Thanks for acknowledging something new or something maybe that you're already doing that we can improve on, acknowledging that SEL is important and that our students are worth us learning and growing so that we can serve them better. And so, Kanisha, anything to add?
Yeah, I think you covered it all. Just thank you guys for joining us. Me and Nikki are super excited to partner with you in the amazing work that you're already able to accomplish. If there's any support that we are able to provide, we are just a phone call or email away.
Absolutely. That wraps us up for today, everybody. Thank you so much.
See ya.